Hello everyone, welcome to this channel. Today I'm going to get ready with you and talk about my recent trip to Dubai and Oman, specifically delving into the realities of traveling on your own. What's it like? What are the pros? What are the cons? What is my advice for solo traveling? And I'm saying this as someone who solo travels all the time. Like most of the time when I'm traveling, I am traveling on my own. I did not start off this way. I actually used to be chronically afraid of traveling on my own. I never thought that I would be capable of traveling on my own. Now I'm traveling all over the world by myself on my own, and yeah, it's something that I find really empowering and beautiful and wonderful and exciting. So I figured I would chat about it in this Get Ready With Me. But if this is your first time watching this channel, hello, my name is Anya. I absolutely love talking about all things fragrance, lifestyle, beauty, and I have this YouTube channel where I publish videos 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I also publish additional content on TikTok and Instagram under the username ANECHKAFRAGRANCES, and if you're interested in seeing more of my travel content, I publish that there as well. I also have a podcast. It's called The Fragrance Report. On this podcast, I talk a lot about beauty and fragrance history. So if you're interested in checking the podcast out, it's called The Fragrance Report. It's available on Spotify and here on YouTube every Wednesday. I've been taking a bit of a hiatus, but I'm getting ready to come back to publishing episodes of the podcast. So be sure to catch up on all the previous episodes on Spotify and on YouTube. And in addition to that, if you're trying to be a little bit more mindful with your spending, if you're trying to find a better way to track what's already in your fragrance collection, I'd recommend downloading my fragrance collection log and expense tracker. It's available in my Stan store. So with that being said, we have a lot to get through in this video, so let's get started. It's definitely giving Hagrid over here. So let's put this hair up while I get ready to do makeup. This is going to be the best we can do. All right, so I'm essentially getting ready to film a few things for you guys. I'm going to be doing a Smash or Pass. It's currently Sunday, so I'm getting all my filming done for the week. I filmed like one thing yesterday, but I have a lot of catching up to do because I have been out of the country for like a week and a half, and while I do a lot of pre-filming, there needs to be some refresh, like I need to get back on top of things and get some more content out for you guys. So I was thinking that it would be fun to talk a little bit about my trip, if you guys are interested in hearing about that, because I actually absolutely love traveling. And I typically do a lot of solo travel. I'm going to have another video up. I think by the time you see this, that video will already be live, where I talk specifically about Beauty World, and I did like a little bit of a haul. I talked about what I some things that I got at Beauty World in terms of like fragrance, and I also kind of I wouldn't say spilled some tea, but I kind of gave my perspective on Beauty World, because for those of you who don't know, I was in Dubai for Beauty World, and then after that I went to Oman for, I think it was like the whole trip was a week and a half. So it was a week and a half of being in the Middle East by myself. I haven't really been to the Middle East before, so it was a totally new experience, and I really very much loved it. So yeah, I had some thoughts about Beauty World because I think that a lot of people who didn't even attend Beauty World had some opinions to say about Beauty World. And I wanted to put in my own 2 cents because as someone who actually went to the event, I had a few thoughts to say. So that video has already been up, so you guys can go watch that if you want. But I wanted to talk mainly here about traveling, like solo traveling, my experience with it, my tips, and I truly do think if you have the opportunity to, solo traveling can be one of the most rewarding and necessary things you can do, because you learn so much about yourself, but it's definitely not something that's easy. And it's funny because a few years ago, if you had told me I would be solo traveling, like primarily solo traveling. Yes, I travel with other people, but I primarily travel by myself. And there are a few reasons behind this. The first thing is simply that I don't really want to wait for other people to make a decision about going somewhere. I happen to be friends with a lot of people that are working on their higher education, they're working on jobs, and what happens when, like, as you grow older, I feel, is everyone has obligations, everyone has responsibilities, and you have to align PTO, which is basically like days off. You have to align that with like the entire group. You also have to make sure that like your style of traveling is consistent across the board, because different people have different ideas about what constitutes a worthwhile trip. So for me personally, when I go somewhere, I don't want to be sitting with like a little, soda by the beach and just getting my tan on. I don't want to be in a resort. I want to be in the nitty gritty. I want to be with the locals. I want to learn about the country or about the place that I'm visiting. That to me is incredibly fulfilling. And if you put me in a resort, yes, I'd probably like it for like a day, but then I would be like itching to get out of there. I'm also not someone who likes to sleep in when I'm on vacation. Like yes, I'll sleep in if I have to, but I wake up early. I see as much as possible. I don't go to the hotel to take a nap. And all these little details are so incredibly important to establish like your different styles when it comes to traveling, because when you think about like people's bad experiences when they travel with friends, when you think about arguments that can arise, when you think about like different styles, that arises because you haven't spent the time to communicate like what is a fulfilling trip for each of you. So like, what is a fulfilling trip in terms of budget? What would make someone feel comfortable? What would make someone feel uncomfortable? So all these different nuances and different key details are so important to talk about. And I will say this right now, I can only think of about like maybe 1, 2, 3 people in my life that I like traveling with, and those people happen to be incredibly busy. And I'm comfortable with traveling with those people. I love traveling with those people. I will go with those people. Like, but not everyone, I'm not saying this to sound like too much, but not everyone can handle myself traveling, which is why I travel a lot by myself. And when I was going to the Middle East, not gonna lie, part of me was feeling a sense of kind of like nervousness, because I was really afraid of like, not really afraid, but I was really nervous about it because I'd never been somewhere where I A, did not speak the language at all, but B, also had no idea about the infrastructure, culture, what's normal, what's not. Yes, I had done a lot of research, and that's the key thing. You have to do so much research. Because I'm not Middle Eastern. I might look Middle Eastern to a lot of people, but I am not Middle Eastern. I am fascinated by the culture. I wanted to learn more about it, so I figured might as well go. But I'm definitely not Middle Eastern. It's not something that I am familiar with on a personal level. And it's funny because even though I wasn't really familiar with the Middle Eastern culture or like the customs, like the norms of what's considered decent, like I still did a lot of research, and I recommend doing so much research, especially if you're a female solo traveler. Make sure you're going somewhere that is safe. Make sure you're honest about what you can handle. Like little things, for example, like I'm 5'2". So whenever I'm traveling, especially if I'm traveling by myself, I know that I have to be prepared and ready to lift my luggage by myself. So like, I have to be very savvy about packing what I'm packing, because I know the places I'm going to, I'm not going to have someone to help me with my luggage as a default. I might have to maneuver things by myself. So little things like that. Other things like, hey, if there's like a medical issue, how do I solve that? Do I have like pain pills? Do I have the kind of medicines I would need in place? Like little things like that. Like all these little things add up and are so important. And also, are you staying in a part of the area where you would feel safe? Like, are you next to like a heavily populated area, or are you in a part of the town, city, country that would be potentially unsafe? Like all these things are so important to figure out. So my thoughts on Oman. I guess I'm going a little bit out of order. I basically went to Dubai. I was in Dubai for about 3 days. I think the third day of Beauty World, I just didn't go. By the way, Beauty World was amazing. I was able to interact with so many brands and meet so many interesting people. I met Raja Dove for the first time, by the way. I got a picture with him, which was epic, not gonna lie. I need to put that up on my Instagram if I haven't already. But basically, yeah, Beauty World was amazing. And going to Dubai was helpful because I was able to kind of get like a little bit of an intro into like what Middle Eastern culture is like. Even though Dubai is kind of like very much westernized, it's not going to be super conservative compared to other countries. But I felt like Dubai was pretty safe for me to understand what the culture was like before going to Oman. So when I was in Dubai, I was staying with a friend's parents, so I felt like super safe because I was able to be there with them. I'm very close with their daughters, so like it was really easy to just interact with them and really get all my questions answered, which was lovely. And then from there, I went right to Oman. Now, Oman was interesting because I was not staying in a resort. I was staying like in hotels and places on my own. And I did end up going through a bunch of tour groups when I was in Oman. I had a few drivers. I did not rent a car, even though that is an option. I don't love driving, and I also didn't want to be in a situation where I potentially have to change a tire or fix something on the side of the road. Like that was just not something that I wanted. So I ended up going for a few excursions where there was a driver available. So that was really great. I went through tour guides. Definitely, if you're by yourself in an unfamiliar country, that 100%, like go with tour groups, venture out, be with people. Because even though, yes, I do like interacting with, regular day-to-day people, sometimes if you really want to see places in a safe way, doing it in a tour group is going to be like one of the best options. So yeah, I had a few excursions and I had a few tour guides, and it was really helpful because I was basically able to like get driven around. So it was not an issue. I honestly was able to book it all ahead of time. Obviously recommend doing that. Book ahead of time. And also, here's the other thing. When I showed up in Oman, I was kind of like, something that I've noticed, okay, and this is my opinion, but I've noticed that a lot of times, and I'm talking about tourists in general, not tourists coming from any specific country, but I've noticed a lot of times people don't tend to understand the culture of a place. They just assume that because they're Westerners, you can go into an area and act as if you would or dress as if you would in the West and have it be totally fine. I have talked to locals in Oman, and they informed me that it's not appropriate in their culture to have bare arms. And I was seeing so many tourists, female tourists with bare arms, and it's just like a little bit interesting because that in and of itself, I kind of see it as a little bit of a luxury because if you are traveling in a group, like, yeah, of course, you don't have to be super accustomed to the culture, or you don't really have to think too much about what's normal in that culture, because theoretically you're kind of like cocooned in your like own like little bubble of like a tour group. So like you don't really have to worry, like if you're traveling with like family, if you're traveling with your partner, if you're traveling with friends, you don't really have to think too much about like having to blend in. But if you are a female traveler, if you all are a solo traveler, especially, blending in is going to be the best thing you can do because you don't want to attract attention to yourself. And I'm pretty good at blending in, I would say. When I was in Oman, I mean, obviously I don't speak Arabic, so I wasn't speaking to people like right off the bat. But when I was walking down the street, I was walking through a few touristy areas, and you know that like when people kind of clock a tourist and they start kind of like hassling that tourist, they're trying to like sell stuff to them. That didn't happen to me. I was like walking, doing my own thing, and people just thought I was like part of the people thought I lived there, basically, which was really helpful because that's when, you know, dressing the part, looking the part really becomes valuable, because you don't want to stand out in a bad way. You don't want to draw attention to yourself in a way that would make you a target or would make people think, oh yeah, that person's not from here. Especially, might I reiterate, as a female solo traveler. Something I did not realize actually when I was initially in Oman was that, and I did not realize this because this didn't come up in my research. Maybe I was looking in the wrong places, or maybe people just don't say this as much. But in a lot of the local restaurants, it's not a given to have women sit in men's sections. Like, I noticed this, and if you have like another perspective to add to this, if you've been to Oman as well, please feel free to chime in the comments, because like this was my experience. Because I remember specifically going to a local restaurant. There were no tourists there except maybe like one couple, and that was it. But it was a large restaurant and it was mostly locals, so everyone there was like wearing burqas, hijabs. It was like totally like local, and I walked in and I was like appropriately dressed, like I was covered up. Like, you don't have to cover your hair in Oman, but I was in some situations because I just felt more comfortable, because again I felt like I could blend in a little bit more. But I walked into this restaurant and I sat where I thought everyone else was supposed to be sitting, and they're kind of like yelling at me in Arabic, not in a bad way, but they're just trying to get my attention. And I don't speak Arabic, so I was a little bit confused as to what was going on. And so I told them like politely, I'm sorry, I don't speak Arabic. Can you tell me what you need in English? And they told me like the women and families sit over there. So I basically accidentally almost was about to sit in like the men's section, which I didn't know was a thing. And that was a little bit unexpected, but I also felt completely safe and comfortable sitting in like the families and women's section. There were men in that section too, but it was more like there was like a staff member there too, so it was more like people were being watched in that area a little bit more. It sounds a little bit off, but like it really wasn't. It was just like a different experience. And then I ended up talking to one of the locals, one of my tour guides, the next day, and he goes to that restaurant all the time, and he basically said like, yeah, like they have like this was one of the restaurants where they have a lot of locals, and you don't really sit with men as much as a default. And it was interesting because as I was talking to my tour guide, he basically expressed that this is how they value women. Like, from his perspective, like that's how they value women, by treating them in this kind of like reverent way, by separating them from like men versus women, which is interesting. I'm not saying if that's right or wrong. It's just interesting. And again, this is why I think it's so fascinating going into these like different cultures and learning about how different people live, because it can be completely different from what you're used to. And it doesn't mean it's right or wrong. It's just a different outlook and a different custom, which is really interesting. Something else that I liked was the fact that there was really, really beautiful, abundant natural beauty. And I just felt like it was utterly beautiful. Like, Oman easily, I think, one of the things I absolutely loved about it was the people. Everyone I met was incredibly polite, incredibly hospitable, so open, so friendly. That restaurant that I was telling you guys about earlier, they literally, the person serving me, he was very apologetic about the fact that the food would take 20 minutes. He's like, yeah, the food's going to take 20 minutes because they have to make it. And I'm like, no, it's totally fine. Don't worry about it. And he brought me out a free bowl of soup. And I looked at the bill afterwards and he didn't even charge me for it. But he literally brought me out soup because he's like, you look hungry. And like, he brought me out soup. And that was so friendly. And even at the airport, when I came in, when I was like trying to exchange my currency, I was running into some issues. And everyone at the airport, again, above and beyond, so nice. Literally, the nicest people I met in the Middle East. Like, people were so incredibly kind and nice and lovely. Like, I felt welcome by strangers. And it was really, really lovely. Yeah, I really want to go back. It was one of my favorite places. I did buy a lot of frankincense, and I'm actually burning it right now while I'm talking to you. And it was just absolutely amazing. Yeah, I definitely recommend visiting. I think it's great. I would just do a lot of research, especially if you're traveling alone. And I will be doing more shorts on it, especially from the perspective of being a female solo traveler, because I've seen a lot of men post their experience about traveling in Oman, but not a lot of experience or perspectives by women, you know. And it's not that, like, there are female solo travelers, but I think that it's also important to kind of have this information for women, because I will say this, it is a totally different ballgame if you are a woman traveling by yourself compared to if you're a man traveling by yourself. It's just totally different. It is possible to have an enjoyable and fulfilling trip, but it's totally different. Arguably, it requires way more planning. I wouldn't show up in a new country without a plan. Like, I will tell you guys, this is like also that's something that's quite important while I'm cutting these lashes. Whenever I'm traveling, I always have a Google Doc, a very detailed Google Doc that essentially has all the information about my flights, where I'm staying, my day-to-day itinerary, my transportation, where I'm going, all this detail, and I share it with friends and family. So day by day, they know precisely where I am. They know the hotels I'm staying at. They know what I'm doing. They basically have all this information. And even as someone who's traveling, like if I'm going, for example, if I have multiple transfers, if I have multiple flights, you don't want to be digging in your email, or you don't want to be pulling up the airline app trying to find your flight number. That just adds so much more hassle, and it's just more complicated. It's better to have like the big picture just like laid out, very detailed, because you don't want to get into a situation where like you potentially are trying to quickly get from point A to point B, and then you're trying to like quickly look for a confirmation email in your Gmail when you are trying to get to, from point A to, like, I truly believe that over preparation is so key. It's a lot better to be over prepared than under prepared. Again, as a female solo traveler, especially, I'm never going to, especially a new country, go to a place and be like, YOLO. No, like, I feel like if you're a male solo traveler, sure, you can probably do that. But if you're a female solo traveler and you don't speak the language, my camera died before I was able to make my point. But basically, if you're a female traveler and you don't speak the language, you're not familiar with the customs, like to a very like personal degree, don't do anything like, don't do anything YOLO, basically. And also, if you are someone who's looking to start solo traveling, I would definitely recommend kind of like keeping it domestic, like the very first place like I quote unquote solo travel to. And keep in mind, this is someone who, like me, I'm someone who was for a long time terrified of even flying alone. Like I couldn't do it. Like I was very scared of like doing these things by myself. So to face that fear, I first started out by going to New York by myself. I was flying by myself to like different parts of the U.S. Just to like go see my family in different parts of the U.S. and stuff like that. And then I also then eventually built up to that solo New York trip, which for me was super easy to kind of start off with, because I live in Washington, D.C., or at the time I lived in Maryland. So I basically solo traveled to New York, baby steps. Then eventually I went to London by myself to see family. Then from there, I went to Italy. I went to France, countries I was more familiar with. I eventually started to just travel more and more by default. I didn't just start off going to a different country culture right off the bat. Like I didn't start off going to the Middle East as like my first solo travel endeavor. It was something that I built up to, and that's why I'm saying like I think everyone should solo travel because it really allows you to learn about what it's like being someone new in an unfamiliar place. And I think that level of perspective, like that kind of perspective, is very important to have because it's very easy to forget what it's like for someone to go to a new place. And yeah, like travel by yourself, like solo traveling, it teaches you empathy, it teaches you resilience, it teaches you problem solving. And yes, you could learn these things on your own, but if you are, say, young, if you don't have a lot of responsibilities, obligations in terms of like you don't have kids, you don't have a partner, you're kind of on your own, then solo travel. Do it. I'm doing it. It's something that is so empowering and so amazing. I absolutely love it, and I am going to continue to do it. So yeah, I will definitely be posting more information about my trip to Oman and Dubai on my socials. So if you're interested, definitely make sure you're following me on Instagram and on TikTok because I'll be publishing the videos there. I've already published several pieces of content related to my travels, so be sure to check it out there. But also, if you want me to do more content related to travel, if you would like to see like more Q&As, if you want to get your questions answered, definitely let me know. I'd love to talk about it. I love traveling. It's a hobby, or it's a calling that I absolutely adore, and it's something that really feeds my soul in a way that few other things do. So I would love to talk about it with you. Thank you so much for watching till the end of this Get Ready With Me. I hope you enjoyed this slightly more chatty video and found it interesting, and I'll see you next time. Bye.